Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. A lot of information on where exactly and when exactly Donald Trump and Putin will meet. What will be agreed upon. And that's not good for the Ukrainians. As we know, they would be sacrificed on the altar of the big powers. Zelensky's response to Trump saying, we're going to give Russia some land. Who are you exactly? The guy in charge of you. Why Alaska? Why was Alaska chosen? Because that's where the meeting is going to occur. Well, Alaska was owned by Russia to a certain time when they sold it to the Americans, if you remember, for nothing. To pay for some war expenses, if I remember correctly. So, and it was worthless considered by the Tsars. So we're going to discuss all this, plus some interpretations of what Putin wants. So the West, still West. The guys in charge, they make it seem like we're all together in the same sinking boat. They try to give us instead of telling us this is what the Russians want, most likely this is what the Russians will get, that's why they meet. They try to figure out what the Russians actually will demand, what will be their points, key points when they meet in Alaska. We already know them, and the Americans must have accepted those terms. Otherwise, the Russians don't see any reasons to meet. So, let's start with the first point, which is, where are these guys gonna meet and when? Ram pam pam, right there. We got Sputnik. Putin-Trump Summit to take place in Alaska on August 15th. Why not Rome? Yesterday I made a video when this guy said the Americans proposed Rome. I said, it really cannot be Rome for the reason why Italy is a member of or signatory of the Rome Statute, which is ICC court, which issued an arrest warrant to Putin. Now that would mean nothing, obviously, if these guys give an order like in any institution. Wherever you worked, you have a policy. And that policy, you don't dare to cross it or violate it. Never, ever, ever. But it could be done by some people. Some certain managers, certain CEOs could just trash that policy. Why? Because they can. Those are made for the baboons, not for them. So the same. Oh, ICC court. Even Hungary took a shit on the ICC court arrest warrant for Netanyahu. Netanyahu came to Budapest while Hungary was still a signatory of the Rome Statute. So, this guy is not going to arrest Putin. I said, these guys were going to pull an arrest on Putin in Italy. Italy is not going to go, is not going to survive. That's one. And the other one, maybe is a coup that occurs in Russia. Send the guy over there. These guys create a problem. We take over. And that's it. We're going to solve the problem later. Could have been. Some people said, why would Putin go to the enemy camp? And that's true. Italy is clearly on the other side, provides weapons, money, and so on. They say not like everybody else, but this is why Rome was not acceptable. I thought it would be in somewhere in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. Maybe they talk about the United Arab Emirates. Now is Alaska, clear and nice. Let's see. And I'm going to show you a map where Alaska is, if necessary. And why Alaska? We're going to discuss that one. The Russians are ecstatic about it. Why? They want it back? I wonder. Putin wrote on Truth Social on Friday that his meeting with Putin will take place in Alaska on August 15th. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov later confirmed this information. Now remember, these things are spoken between the guys. I will announce where this will take place and when. And the Russian says, and then we're going to confirm it. It was not the other way around. So when you see Trump saying these kind of things, it's because he wanted it to happen and the other guys allowed him to happen. Otherwise, the Russians could have posted that ahead of him. But no, you build legitimacy. With Trump, you have to play like this. Ego. Give him ego and you get a lot of things done. If you a little bit touch his ego, he's going to be the worst. Hey, meow, meow. Brought a toy. It's going to be your worst enemy if he can. So let's see. This is another opportunity for the Arctic to serve as a venue that brings together world leaders to forge meaningful agreements. While I remain deeply wary of Putin and his regime, I hope this discussion leads to genuine progress and help end the war on equitable terms, Murkowski said on X on Friday. Murkowski, if I remember correctly, if she is the one, she is the Lisa, I think, yeah, she's a US senator. She's a Polish woman. I looked if she's Jewish, but I couldn't find that one. Why it's important? You know. The meeting is likely to take place in or near Anchorage. All right, let me show you where that is. And here's the world map, and we go to Alaska, which is right here. Remember, this is Russia right here. Bam, bam, zam. This is the United States of America. Anchorage or near Anchorage, right here. And we can go on Kodiak Island for some Kodiak bear hunting, right? So this is or near, right in this area. We got it, Kodiak Island, right here. We're going to go hunting. No, you won't. But nevertheless, why here? So he's going to be visiting United States of America. And the Americans said that in the near future, United President Trump will visit Russia. That's good, that's good. All right, let's go and see. Where are we? Right here. The Kremlin-eyed Ushakov said the Kremlin expects that the next meeting after Alaska between Putin and Trump will take place in Russian territory, and a relevant invitation has been passed to the US. So come together right now over me. Boom. Trump reveals location for Putin Summit. The two leaders will meet in Alaska next week. Boom. On Friday. And this is what he said. The highly anticipated meeting between myself, the ruler of the universe, as President of the United States of America. And not only, come on now, Trump. Come on, don't be so, And President Vladimir Putin of Russia will take place next Friday, August 15th, 2025. Wasn't Napoleon Bonaparte born on August 15th? Well, in August 16th, Elvis died. So, in the great state of Alaska. Further details to follow. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Oh my God, thank you, God. Let's move on. Alaska, perfect stage for historic Russia-US summit, Putin's envoy Dmitriev says. I can tell you this, I have a little problem with this envoy Dmitriev. I don't know if it's a picture here or not. The Kirill Dmitriev, and I tell you why. I'm very weary when I see people in high office that were educated or for a period of time went to school in the West, and they return and they quickly are becoming something. And that's the case with this guy. He's a smart guy, the head of Russian Direct Investment Fund. He worked. Why I've seen many people like this who are around you as a leader, and then you use them and they get in contact with their bosses, and then they cut your feet off. And they a good example is Mr. Atanasie Stănculescu, the general in Romania, who was around the Ceausescu family all the time, and then he was put on leave, and then he was brought back, and he was the MI6 guy who told Ceausescu, get in that plane now. And Ceausescu, you think so? Yes. They fucked him up. So, all right, that's one example. And many others are the guy Djugashvili, Saakashvili. Djugashvili is Stalin. Saakashvili in Georgia. If you remember the former president of Georgia, the French-born and so on, these guys are just, these guys were leaders. I don't know about the guys next to you, like the guy, Commerce Secretary in the United States of America, Lutnick. Lutnick, the guy who always stays behind Trump when Trump signs something, he's over there to make sure that the I speak is used, like on Trotsky. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bernstein. All right, no, I'm just kidding. Next one. Let's see what Trump did to anger these guys. As I mentioned in the other video regarding the meeting between the two, it was not the Russians begging these guys. It was the other guys wanting to talk to them. Why? The Russians were open. They said, no, guys, the door is unlocked. You just have to push it open and you come here and we talk. That's what the Russians says. It doesn't mean that's what they did. But the Russians says, we're open. The West, if you want to talk to us, we're good. But we have 4 conditions, and you all know them, and they pretend they don't know. They know them. They know they just play dumb. Some of them are dumb. like Annalena Baerbock and others. So these guys showed up to Putin. When you show up, you come to the Kremlin. You don't invite that guy to come to White House. No, because that's how it happens. The big guy stays and the other emissaries are coming. Remember the Persepolis in ancient Persia? All the satraps were coming to the king of the kings. It was not the king of the king going to the satrap in that village or that village. Satraps, the leaders of areas and so on in Persia. I'm using Persia as a good example. They were coming to him. That's the same. It remained over and over. Sometimes the boss comes in a little inspection. But other than that, he stays home and everybody comes and sucks his lemonade. So the same here. Vitkov was sent. These guys wanted something. So it was like, as I said, Trump with a little mandolin, a serenade to Putin. And Putin was on the balcony, sing a song for me. Mr. Piano Man. And that's how it was. And Putin agreed to the mandolin. It was not the mandolin, but the fucker come over here, boom, boom, boom. He can't do anything. He was down and the girl, Russia, was up in the balcony. So obviously the Russians' conditions were heard and must have been in a way or another accepted to a certain point. Remember, everything I said right now, it's weasel. Not everything I said, the last 20 seconds. Everything the Russians put forth must have been accepted to a certain extent. Not everything, and not in entirety, but they must have agreed to that. Otherwise the Russians should not have appeared. So here it is. Rest of the day. 8th of August, this is yesterday. We knew this from yesterday. Trump considers territory swap between Russia and Ukraine. What do you mean swap? What are the Russians going to give? Germany? So the Russians will give Germany to Ukraine and Ukraine is going to give Donbas. It's not about giving. Remember, this guy is allowed to say things. He cannot do anything. He cannot do, he can do a lot of damage or a lot of good, but he doesn't have that much power to decide. The Russians allow him. They agree with this. Trump considers territory swap. Yeah, Trump, you're good. When Trump steps left or right off the target, they're going to say, Trump, no, okay. The US president has shared a new insight on the specifics of a potential peace deal between Kiev and Moscow. The peace deal to settle the Russian-Ukraine conflict would likely involve some exchange of territory between the two countries. Exchange meaning one side gives to the other. Don't get fooled. They say territory swap. What are they going to swap? Maybe the Russians in Sumy Oblast and in in Kharkiv, they will say, oh, we got some territories, we're going to give that, you're going to give us the Donbas. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. The Russians invaded here for the buffer zone, so-called. You see? So they will say, okay, we're going to give you this back. We're going to give you this back. We're going to give you this back. But you give us. You accept to everything else taken. Right? But hey, that's why we are here. That's why we are here in Kharkov. That's why we in Sumy. The buffer zone. Good luck with that one. So let's see, where were we? Next one. The US president made the remarks as he hosted the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia. I'm going to cover that garbage in a minute. After this video. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some territory back. And the one that I mentioned. And we're going to get some switched. There will be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both. But we'll be talking about that either later or tomorrow, Trump stated. Okay, this is the first thing the Russians say. The Russian military is currently in control of patches of land along the border in the Ukrainian region of Kharkov and Sumy. Oh, they already put it right here. But there you have. This is probably the Russians are going to give, as I said. They're going to give this little garbage, pock, and the other guys will keep this one right here. All right, let's see what's next. Trump, on his peace plan, Ukraine would regain some land but give up others. As I said, probably that's what's going to be. And I'm going to show you Zelensky's anger about that, why he knows he's going to be hanged by his nationalist. Not a nationalist, it was the wrong term, by the Nazis. Because if I say nationalists, that means I equate them with being bad and all that, which they're not. They just love their nation more than others. US President Donald Trump said his plan to end the war in Ukraine envisions a territory swap under which Ukraine would regain part of its land but be forced to relinquish other areas. The same thing. I think that's what it is, my friends. His proposal, however, effectively assumes Moscow would not give up any of the areas it occupies, while Kiev would agree to concessions. No, it's going to be those little things in the northeast. Trump, there should be territory swap in the interest of both Ukraine and Russia. This is one of the four Russian non-negotiable terms. I know they entered the Ukraine unprovoked and but they still have four demands, and they say these are non-negotiable, which is NATO. This is recognition of the territories we got, denazification, that is certain ideologies that promote certain things should be not spoken about, or at least not glorified, and demilitarization of Ukraine. That means you will not receive Western weapons to start over. We're gonna make sure that we do this, what Rome did to Cartage. Remember the second war? Punic War, I think it's called Punic War, between Rome and Carthage across the Mediterranean Sea. They flattened the second one. The Romans flattened Carthage. The Phoenicians were flattened. Supposedly they took brick by brick, dismantled the town. Then they put salt on it so nothing will grow back. Let me show you where that kind of occurred, where there is. Just a historical thing. So bear with me. So here it is, the Mediterranean Sea. So Italy is right here, Rome is here, and Carthage was on the other side of I don't know exactly, was Tunis, Tripoli, I don't know exactly where Carthage was. I'm not bad, you go and check it out, it's enough how I gave you. But they did it somewhere in this area, and Carthage was gone. So the Russians will do the same thing to Ukraine, want to make sure they will never get their head up with the help of the Western interests to destroy Russia. That's what it is. So again, the interest. Now it's going to be all over. Zelensky trashes Trump's peace terms. So we're talking about peace terms. Did you hear that? So it's not a ceasefire. It's a peace terms. It's not about ceasefire. That means those guys are, as I claimed in the other video yesterday, the Russians will not agree just to meet and have a photo op and they will make some ceasefire. They are thinking of in terms of centuries, not election cycles. As Professor Stephen Cohen, which I like very much, said many times. He said, the Russians are thinking ahead in centuries. That's how they plan. We, in election terms, how do I win the next fucking election? It's going to be in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 6 years, depends on the senatorial term, and so on. Let's move on. The Ukrainian leader, because Zelenskyy is Ukrainian, you must know that, said Kiev will not accept any agreement with Moscow that includes territorial concessions. He can't jump on the yes wagon right now. He has to play like this. I think Zelenskyy will be taken away. He's going to come to London and stay there, or New York, and someone else would make this concession. That's what I think is going to be. If Zelenskyy will say that, maybe, he has no say. Zelenskyy has a say, but it doesn't weigh squat. That's what it is, I think. So he can say this for everybody else. Well, he's supposed to say, yes, we agree with that. He's supposed to say that. The next day, his head will be in a pike, or how do you call that, pole. Vladimir Zelenskyy has rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's call for territorial concessions to Russia, claiming no such agreement would be accepted by Ukrainian people. I know, but the question is, why did you enter all this war? Why didn't you just say we're going to do what we signed in the name of the Ukrainian people in 2015, which is the Minsk Agreement 2. Ukraine as a country signed it and became a legal binding document. It went to the United Nations. It's called international law now. That is Minsk Agreement 2, 2015. And you didn't. And you, Zelenskyy, said with your big balls, you said, oh, I don't like anything about the Minsk Agreement. That should be renegotiated. And then the war started just because the Russians were bad. Correct? Correct. You were not for peace. You were for war. And now you tell about the Ukrainian people will not accept something that you were part of initiating? You're telling me that? Yes, that's exactly what he says. All right. And now he says the Ukrainian people. And he's hiding like always. Remember those guys? You gotta kill him because our law doesn't allow us to kill him. Remember? That was in your Bible. You remember that when they told the Roman governor, Pontius Pilatus, no, you with your hands are gonna crucify the guy because we can't do that, but we make you do that. That's Zelensky right now. No, I can't do that, but if you guys decide, that is the Ukrainian people, then it's your decision. I can't do that in good faith. Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, so let's see what's going on here. All right, next one. New voice of Ukraine. Ukrainians, you see, it's Ukrainians. Now it's Ukrainians. Did the Ukrainians were okay with you rejecting the Minsk Agreement 2015? Were the Ukrainians okay with that, or you just did it? You just did it. You didn't ask the Ukrainians with anything. Now you give me the Ukrainians. You gotta make the decision. I got you in this big doo-doo, but you gotta make the decision to do what? This is very bazaar-like behavior, if you know what I mean. Jesus Christ, my God. Won't give land to occupiers. Zelensky reacts, and he's gonna be the leader. He's the most nationalist and patriotic Ukrainian. No, you were part of it. All right, Zelensky on territory swap. We. Who's we? Is this we, you being part of the Ukrainian nation? You make me fucking laugh. Will not give our land to Russian occupier. Where's your land? Not even in the Middle East. But anyway, you know what I'm talking? We will not give our land to Russian. Just as a little caveat, you're not asked. You have no say. If you think you have a say, this guy's going to pull back and see how you're going to fight the Russians. And you can't. So unfortunately, you go to the origin of this garbage. And indeed, the origin is 1991. And then you go to 2008, and then you go to 2014, and then you go to 2015, and then you end up finally to 2022, February 24, when the Russians invaded, right? If you ask me why I got back to 1991, if you've been here for some time, you know exactly why. I mention this all the time. This is when NATO, which is United States of America, had the chance to create Pax Americana in its own, how should I put it, own way, is own, how do you call it, image. But the image is this. You do what I tell you, otherwise I smack you. That's how these guys give us the impression of democracy. Anyway, these guys control. All right, so here it is. We will not give our land to Russian occupiers. But who got us in? And got a Ukrainian flag and everything else and blah, blah. Next one. Zelensky, we see no changes in Russia's position on ending the war. What is this? Where is it? What is this? Aren't they gonna talk? Is that a change? Now ending the war. Indeed, you are surprised, it seems like Zelensky is surprised, plays surprise, that the Russians will not change. Of course they won't. They got into this for the war. What do you want them to do? And are not losing. And Trump wanted to talk to them. They were not, please come over here, Trump. Trump sent Vitkov 5 times to Moscow. It was not this guy sending, I don't know, Mr. Bernstein, Trotsky from Russia to Washington, D.C., wasn't it? So that means these guys were playing the mandolin to the prima donna in the balcony, weren't they? What are they talking about? Why should they change? You got them in, now you gotta, get bloody. Or a bloody nose. We don't see no changes. Of course no changes. So this is what he says. The Russians still refuse to stop the killings. Well, the operation that you dragged them in kind of like is not over. Still invest in the war. What about the other side? I mean, all this, what this guy says, you put Ukraine and their masters. The Ukrainians and their masters, the Western paymasters, still refuse to stop the killing. It's true. Why? We defend ourselves. Still invest in the war. and still push the idea of exchanging Ukrainian territory for Ukrainian territory. Well, if you ask the Russians, what you call Ukrainian territory is Russian territory. So how can you do that? How can we change that? You can't like that. You tried your way. In 2015, it was clear the Minsk agreements allowed Ukraine to be as it is, one piece, with the Donbas having an partly autonomous status. Yeah, that means they will be in Ukraine, they will be in Ukraine, but they're a little bit outside, like the Bundes, let's say in Germany, kind of. You're kind of independent, like in America, the states. But they didn't even like that one. I'm talking about the guys in charge. So if you would have agreed, Mr. Zelensky, the 2015 Minsk agreements too, that you didn't like anything you said, this was the word, anything, I don't like anything about it, now you got this one. So what do you want now? It's too late. They got it. What do you want them to give them back? A lot of people died. A lot of families were fucked on both sides. Because of whom? You didn't like anything about it. So if you would have been your guy, which you were not, in 2021, and would have agreed to continue, which you were not, Minsk agreements, Ukraine would be one piece, no NATO in it, and the Ukrainians would have been gone and a buffer zone between the Russians and the West. But no, these guys wanted all, and this guy said no. And there you have it, and you were part of it. Ukraine territory with consequences that guarantee nothing except more favorable positions for Russia to resume the war. No, Russia will not, because Russia doesn't go to work twice. Russia is going to do like the Romans in a second Punic War. The first one was fucked up. They did the same thing with the Phoenicians. Well, the war was not like they beat the Phoenicians, but it was not something very conclusive. And the Phoenicians says, okay, we're going to give you everything, blah, 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 blah. And they armed themselves and they started doing shit. Not that the Romans were angels, don't get me wrong. They wanted territory, they wanted influence. So, okay, don't get me. They were predatory empire. I mean, empire is predatory by its definition, if you want. Unless people come to you and just want to be with you. But then, anyway. So then the second one, these guys want to make sure we're not going to go the third time. The same here, that's the Russians. What do you expect? They don't want to go again. Why would they go again? Always starting something from right now. The Russians' position is right here. If they start over again, they're going to be here. Why would they do that? No, they want to make sure you will never come back up. The Voice of Ukraine. Institute for the Study of War Analysis. Putin won't settle without full Ukraine victory. Correct, finally, but they say that only because they don't like this. These guys are owned, you know who they are, where are you? Institute for the Study of War. Miss Kimberly Kagan, she's the sister-in-law of Victoria Nuland through the brothers Kagan. All right, right here. So that's what it is, my friends. Let's move on. I have anything here? I'm going to read that in a different video. Sputnik. Trump and Putin could lay the groundwork for end of Ukrainian conflict in Alaska. You know why? Because the United States of America is behind the other side in the conflict. That's why I always said, this thing that, I'm going to meet Zelensky and you are the mediator and I want to see what Zelensky wants to say, maybe the Europeans, it was just a farce. The Russians went clearly to the origin. Why should I talk to you? I told you many times, when I go to a store to return a product or something is wrong, I want to meet the person who has the decision, who's the decision maker, who makes the decision. I don't talk to you half an hour, explain to you, and you say, oh, okay, let me call the associate, the manager. I spoke with you half an hour of my life. You're paid, by the way, to talk to me. I'm not. I wasted half an hour, and now you call the another baboon to make a decision after I again explain half an hour. No, cut the crap. Give me the one that can make a decision. I'm not going to waste my time twice. The same here. The Russians speak with the Russians. Speak with the Americans. They don't speak with the Ukrainians. The clear thing is the Americans versus the Russians. It's been like this from the very beginning. 1991. Next one. Putin tells US he will end the war in exchange for Ukraine's Donbas. Wall Street Journal. Okay. So where is the misunderstanding here? Is there a misunderstanding? Clearly that's what it was. And it's not going to be only that. You see, these guys play dumb, Wall Street Journal. They play dumb. No, this is one of the of the reasons. One of the four, remember, Russian leader has told Steve Witkoff, US President Donald Trump's special envoy for the Middle East, this is Mr. Witkoff, that Russia will halt military action in Ukraine in exchange for significant territory concessions from Kiev and international recognition of the occupied territories. Okay, if that's what it is, so that means the Russians agree with NATO being in the rest of Ukraine? Is that what it is? Washington Post? Wall Street Journal, I'm sorry. Is that what it is? And they're okay with Ukraine being pumped with weapons, Western weapons? They're okay? He just wants the territory, so these guys can start over? No. No, no. They want to make sure Ukraine will never be on the other side, ever. Sorry for my Ukrainian friends, but that happens when you are owned. Romania is owned too. What am I doing? Yapping around. Anyway, so here is, my friends, when they're going to meet, why they're going to meet. I think this is what's going to be discussed. They will sign some documents. The Ukrainians and the Europeans will be told, and I'm going to cover this in another video, will be told this is what's going to happen. This is one thing that we have to pay attention to. The Americans, Donald Trump is not on his own. I don't think he's, the change in mood, I said this before, Trump will win and he will be the one who's going to seize for all this, going to peace, and it's going to be because they don't want to lose the public relations campaign. We are the best, we tell everybody what to do. So they will use Trump as, that's an order. You can now, everybody wants to talk to Putin, and I said this. Everybody at one point will want to talk to Putin. They're going to say, hey man, why don't we talk to Putin? For 4 years we have been talking to Putin. Why not? Because the order was given. Macron wants to talk to Putin now. These guys want to talk to Putin. You see, they will all of a sudden, Putin did not change his condition. He's still the war criminal, but they will talk to him. Why? Who gave the order? I tell you, Putin, Russia was not kneeled. And this guy said, well, change of course. Change course. We have to do it. It's not because the Russians are please, please, please. No, they said, you don't want to talk to us in 2021, early 2022? We're going to get in. That's what this guy said. And here we are again to Cuban Missile Crisis. The Russians, then the Soviets, made the Americans do something for them. But it took time and a lot of tragedies. If you don't know what I'm talking about, well, I explained it many, many times before. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.